Barometer falling at 30.46, and currently it's 34 degrees.
Get a little closer to your mouth there. There you go.
Get it nice and tight.
The Legislature Today is on the air from our flagship affiliate, the voice of the Northern Plains, 550 Cape Fire, and affiliates Talk Radio AM 1100 The Flag Fargo and Talk Radio 1090 The Flag in the Bakken. We're broadcasting live from the historic Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar in downtown Bismarck, the National Cattlemen's Association Beef Innovator of the Year. You're about to find out what's happening in the North Dakota legislative session. Your host of the Legislature Today is Dale Wetzel, managing editor of Great Plains News and the Great Plains Examiner. If you have questions or comments or to watch the show, go to GreatPlainsNews.com. GreatPlainsNews.com. The Legislature Today is brought to you by the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties, the Credit Union Association of the Dakota, the University of Mary, the North Dakota Corn, Soybean and Grain Growers Association, and the North Dakota Ethanol Council, the Northwest Landowners Association, Touchstone Energy Cooperative, North Dakota Rural Electric Cooperatives Association, and members Minnesota Power and Great River Energy, the North Dakota chapter of Concerned Women for America, the Expressway Inn and Suites, where a good night's rest costs less, and the Peacock Alley. It's time to get started. Another hour of the Legislature Today is on the air.
This is Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. You might hear the bar beneath us. There's a good number of folks who are filling up the bar in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota, and there is a band here this evening at the bar. It's actually a gentleman with an acoustic guitar and a lady singer, and they're entertaining the folks. And if you want to hear some live music, come down to the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota, and be entertained. And you can also have a nice drink and a nice meal and relax in a rustic and historic atmosphere. This place has a lot of history, and it's a lot of it's hanging on the walls, and you can watch it or look at it and enjoy it. This is the University of Mary Hour on the Legislature Today. We have with us Dr. Sam Kondik, who is the Assistant Professor of Philosophy in the School of Arts and Sciences at the University of Mary, and he's Director of the Institute for Culture and Public Service. We also have Dr. James Jones, who's the Vice President. These two gentlemen about school program. First of all, I thought we'd give a little update as to what's going on in the legislature today. There was an animal cruelty bill that was debated in the Senate today, and we're going to have some more discussion about that. The reason it was brought up in the first place is that the chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee wanted a final vote on this bill to send it to the governor, but his wishes were not agreed with. Instead, we're going to have a conference committee on this bill and work out its final details. What this bill does is it institutes for the first time a felony penalty of cruelty, animal cruelty in North Dakota, which carries a possible punishment of 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. And cruelty to an animal is defined as breaking bones, causing extreme pain, causing prolonged sickness, mutilation, and torture. Right now, the top penalty for being cruel to an animal or mistreating an animal in North Dakota is a Class A misdemeanor, which has a top penalty of a year in jail and a $2,000 fine. And so a felony crime is obviously more serious, and it carries consequences beyond the longer punishment and greater fine. One of the points of difference about the bill is whether or not repeated instances of animal neglect, which is another category of animal mistreatment in the bill, should always be punished as a Class A misdemeanor, which is, again, a year in jail and $2,000 fine. A previous version of the bill said that repeated instances of animal neglect could be punished as a felony crime. We also had a discussion in the legislature today, in the Senate in particular, about new and more stringent penalties for driving under the influence. What this carries is first of all, there's a new crime called criminal vehicular homicide, which would be established by this bill. If you are a drunken driver and you cause an accident that kills someone, you could be charged with a Class A felony with a minimum sentence of 3 years in prison. If you cause a serious injury and you're a drunken driver and cause a serious injury, you could get a minimum sentence of at least 1 year in prison. The second, there's also an increased penalty for driving under the influence while you're with someone who's younger than 18, for example, a parent with a child. The second conviction for a DUI while with a minor would also be punished as a Class C felony instead of as a misdemeanor. That is another one of the elements of the bill. But the primary thing that folks might notice is that this bill does create what's called an aggravated first offense of driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. If your blood alcohol content is 0.18% or greater, you could spend at least 2 days in jail or be forced to do 20 hours of community service. Also, the mandatory fine for a first offense is doubled from $250 to $500. Now, these penalties are quite a bit less than was expected when the legislature began. This legislation was driven by some horrific accidents that happened last July in North Dakota. There were 2 separate instances in which 2 young boys who were camping near Lake Metagoshi were run over by a drunken driver in their tent and killed. There was also an incident where a family from West Fargo was killed. When I say a family, I mean a husband and wife, a young granddaughter, or a young daughter, and also the woman was pregnant with her second child. They were all killed by a drunken driver who was going the wrong way on Interstate 94 near Jamestown. And these crimes attracted a lot of statewide attention and propelled some momentum for a increased penalty for drunken driving. And at first, it was the initial bill that was introduced had a 4-day minimum jail sentence for drunken driving and a rather substantial fines. Now things have become more lenient since then, and one of the reasons is because there is not enough jail space or prosecutors to handle the increased number of criminal prosecutions that would be likely to result from these changes. One other thing I thought would be worth mentioning, you might be interested to know as a North Dakotan taxpayer that within the budget bill right now for the State Historical Society of North Dakota is $100,000 to purchase the Lawrence Welk farmstead. Yes, the king of Champaign. You could soon own a piece of the place where the king of Champagne music was born. This place is just west of Strasburg. I've been there. It's a rather interesting place, actually. I never thought it would be owned by the taxpayers, but that might change. It's about a 6-acre site. It's been open to the public for about 20 years. It has a summer kitchen, has a carriage house, it has the actual home, it has a barn and a outdoor toilet. And according to the bill, the Historical Society has to determine what repairs have to be completed by the owners of the property. Right now it's owned by a nonprofit organization. They'll have to determine what repairs need to be done to the property before the homestead is sold to the Historical Society, and there is $100,000 in this bill to buy the Lawrence Welk farmstead. Now we'll see if that provision survives in the final version of the Historical Society's budget, because one of the complaints about this particular budget item is that there is a shortage of funds to hire staff to staff the newly expanded Heritage Center when it becomes open. And so you have, according to some legislators, a possible staffing shortage in the new Heritage Center, and at the same time you have money to acquire the Lawrence Welk farmstead. That seems to be, according to the opinion of some legislators, a bit of a case of misplaced priorities. Anyway, we want to get to the University of Mary Hour. And again, who we have with us are Dr. Jim Jones. He's the Vice President for Continuing and Professional Education at the University of Mary. We have Dr. Sam Kondik, who is an Assistant Professor of Philosophy and Director for the Institute of Culture and Public Service. First of all, Mr. Kondik, tell us about the Institute for Culture and Public Service. What is its purpose?
Well, thanks, Dale, for having us on here. This is it's an honor to be on again. I appreciate you having me on here again.
I want to interrupt you for a moment.
Sure.
I think I know that the radio is an audio instead of a visual medium.
Right.
But for those of you who meet Dr. Kondik, I think you'll notice a rather striking resemblance to the actor Robert Downey Jr.
I've had this. The Robert Downey Jr.
I hope you don't have his drug and alcohol problems, but I
leave that to Robert Downey. We sort of divide up the work that way.
Okay.
So, sort of like Fat Elvis and Thin Elvis.
Okay.
I'm the sober Robert Downey.
All right, very good.
Ferris Bueller is the other one I always get, but I think that was a few pounds ago, actually. But thank you for having me on. The Institute, the whole idea behind the Institute is it's a collaboration between the University of Mary, obviously, and United Tribes Technical College, as well as Bismarck State College. And really what it's an attempt to do is it's looking at all the changes that are going on in North Dakota right now. Agriculture, for example, has been on a 10-year run, historic 10-year run. But, of course, also there's really an explosion in the oil and gas industry here, in the exploration and production industry. I spent about 10 years working in the oil and gas industry, really around the world. So I'm very familiar and excited about all those changes there. But that's also, it's a very dramatic shift for any region to start producing oil in the quantities that we're producing. And I think in response to just the general changes that are happening and also those changes that we're seeing driven by oil, the three institutions realized that, look, we need to start finding ways to address those, and we need to sort of pool our resources, find ways that these three institutions with three distinct missions can find common things to work on, and how do we take the unique things that we all do and bring them all together to address these very dramatic and promising changes that are occurring.
And I understand you've been having some meetings with local civic organizations about the Institute, and could you tell us about those?
Absolutely. One of the, I really should say it's sort of a collaboration between the three colleges, but we really have been assisted greatly by the Bismarck Mandan Development Association. Judy Sauter and Brian Ritter and Russ Steiger there have really been sort of, from the beginning, very enthusiastic supporters of the whole program, and indeed the whole BMDA has been. And just last week, we were sort of giving them an update on the various things that we've been doing. The Institute really has 4 areas that we focus on. Cultural enrichment. As change happens, how do we make sure that what's best in North Dakota today is carried on to the North Dakota of tomorrow? Let's not lose all the good things that we have today as things change. Let's try to focus on those things and bring them forward. Academic programming, obviously. We have 3 institutions, academic institutions. How can we coordinate our academic activities to address the change? Community outreach. It's not just about the students coming along, but it's also the people that are working in the community now, doing things now. How do we help them understand what's going on? How do we give them assistance? And that can be anything from financial management. You think about this, Dale, that a back of the envelope calculation is that annually the oil industry is throwing out about $3.6 billion annually in royalty payments, right? So there's a lot of new money entering into. We're literally pumping money out of the ground and putting it into banks and in people's pockets here in North Dakota, which is a wonderful thing. That's a great thing. But then it also, what do you do with it? How do you manage that money successfully and responsibly? So,
I imagine you try to encourage some people to give it to the University of Mary, at least some of it.
Well, absolutely, or even to, an assistant professor of philosophy at the University of Mary. Anybody,
It's time for an endowed chair,
exactly,
I think.
That's right, easy chair, yeah. So, one of the things we want to do is community outreach, and so these are just, many of the things, anything that's relating to issues and questions that are rising across the state, within Bismarck, but across the state, we want to be able to address. And then the last one is idea transfer. One of the things that I learned traveling internationally for an oil service company is you got to see the effects that oil growth has in a region. And one of the things that really has to be watched carefully is how do you diversify out of an oil-based economy. You know, oil is a very, very cyclical and capricious kind of industry. When I got into it in 1995, oil was at 14, and now it's at 97. I doubt we'll see 14 again, but I don't think we'll see 97 forever. You know, that you can bet on that sooner or later changing, that dynamic changing. And then the question becomes, well, how do you manage that kind of change economically? How do you diversify so that when oil is down, other industries can pick up the slack, and then when oil is up, how do you take the cash that's coming in from oil and use that to grow and continue to really create a stable life for people, which I think is one of the most important things. So we were kind of giving a report to the BMDA on those areas that we've been working on. And we are actually, you know, behind the scenes, we're actually making some really great strides. You know, we don't have anything, unfortunately, that we can take public at this moment, but in each one of these areas, we've got definite steps moving forward with the assistance of the BMDA and also with our great partners at BSC and United Tribes.
Dr. Jones, one of the things that you're responsible for is the University of Mary Worldwide, and that's a very ambitious title. And can you tell me what that means in our context? I mean, when you say University of Mary Worldwide, what does it mean?
Okay. Well, again, thanks for having me on tonight. I really appreciate that. Again, this is my second time here, and
glad to have you.
We're
glad
to be here. Really and truly, this has been a developmental process, and we've started from kind of ground level and moved up through the worldwide establishment process. We do have a campus in Rome, as you well know, but really and truly, this is about providing something outside of the boundaries of the University of Mary to other regions throughout the United States. And it includes a lot of different types of avenues of education that we might provide. Online, on ground, blended. We're forming partnerships with businesses, developing training mechanisms for them to utilize within their own companies. We are looking at community service. Part of our mission is to provide that through our values, and that community service could align with some of the stuff that Sam is doing in his area. We were talking tonight when we first got here about how we might provide a community service in terms of free program structures to the community and not charge for these kinds of things where financial planning or financial knowledge about how to do a checking account, for example. Simple stuff that we can do together and meet part of his mission and mine at the same time. We are mission-driven in everything that we do. I've been here next week for 8 months, and I came from a very, very southern spot in Charleston, South Carolina, to this wonderful climate out here. Although I lived here 35 years ago, I forgot.
It's easy to forget. I think some people try to forget, actually.
Yeah, I do too. But I've gone to every one of our locations now. We have about 4 primary locations: Bismarck, Billings, Montana, Fargo, and Kansas City, Missouri. And I just got back from Kansas City about 2 weeks ago. And what we're doing is we're developing relationships, for example, with Sprint in Kansas City and providing a master's degree in business for them. That's one of the things we're looking at. We have a nursing program that's very active in Kansas City. We're looking at building that up because there's 17 hospitals in that particular community. If we don't pay attention to the needs of the community, we're kind of not fulfilling our mission, and we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So that travel has been a joy for me. I did live in Fargo for those 15 years that I lived in the state, so I have a little bit of background. I went and saw my old houses when I was back over there, so they hadn't changed any, and same color. That bothered me a little bit. So.
Are they in danger of flooding?
They will in Fargo, but I'm not quite sure. I lived a long ways off the river in Moorhead. So
okay, that's good.
I understand, though, that if they don't get the Lawrence Welk house, they're going to buy the Jim Jones house.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's next on the list.
We can have I presume we can come up with some kind of historical significance for that structure. Mr. Jones, Dr. Jones, what do you do? What does the university do in Billings, Montana?
What's it do in Billings, Montana?
Yes.
Well, we have 2 programs going on there right now. We have a master's degree in management and a master's degree MBA program. And we're getting ready to launch another program in August in Billings, which we're extremely excited about, and that'll be a occupational therapy. We already have 15 students for the program. We do have a site, structure that we rent out in Billings right now. And we're also in the Crow Nation, which is about an hour and a half south of Billings. And in that particular location, we have about 14 students that are finishing their master's in business. So we actually and truly, part of our mission, at the end of our mission, it says that we go beyond our borders. Well, we're part of the reason why we go beyond. That's what Worldwide is all about, trying to give an educational opportunity to a lot of people that probably don't have an opportunity to get one.
How do you go about making decisions as to where you're going to offer programs and what the nature of those programs is going to be?
Well, I'm going to have to tell you, I think that's a real good question, and it's a difficult question to answer. The reason that it is because we have to really go in and look at the needs of the community before we make those decisions. And I'll give you an example, and that would be Grand Forks, North Dakota. Grand Forks has been a challenge for us within the community itself, bringing our educational process there. We have about 15 students at Grand Forks, that's about all. But the Air Force Base, which is located right outside of Grand Forks, called us on the phone, wanted to know if we'd like to come up and offer our master's degree in business on ground to Air Force personnel. And all of these guys primarily are officers, are already degreed, but they don't have a master's degree, and they asked us to come in and do this. I went up and visited with the Chief of Education for the Air Force Base, and we came to an agreement, and we're about a week and a half away from finalizing that agreement, that signed agreement. So it's those kinds of things that we look for. To give you another example of what we really do, though, is we might have a business come to us in Fargo. In fact, we are dealing with a couple right now. Won't tell their names, but they've asked us to come in and produce a certification program for them in project management. So we go in, sit down, talk to them, find out what they want, and we already have the program going, so we produce it for them.
At the Grand Forks Air Force Base, what is the size of your projected student body?
They have indicated that they can provide for us about 20 students in each one of the courses. So we would look at somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 students overall for the year, okay? Somewhere in that neighborhood.
And what sort of minimum do you require in order to consider opening a program?
Oh, that's another really good question. I would have to say that we do have minimums, okay? And the minimum that we have is 9. 9 students, we can start a course, okay? But that's in an online setting. It's not in an on-ground setting. It's probably 11 in an on-ground setting, quite honestly. But we do have minimums. All schools have minimums. I'm trying to change that philosophy a little bit to where if we have an online presence in a lot of places, we can have 5 students in one location and 10 in another and 4 in another and still be over that minimum requirement. So we don't really and truly have to deal with minimums anymore.
The gentleman you're listening to is Dr. James H. Jones. He's the Vice President for Continuing and Professional Education at the University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota. We've also been talking to Dr. Samuel B. Kondick, who is the Assistant Professor of Philosophy in the School of Arts and Sciences at the University of Mary, and he is the Director of the school's newly formed Institute for Culture and Public Service. This is the University of Mary Hour on the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in Bismarck, North Dakota. This is Dale Wetzel. We'll be coming back to talk to Dr. Kondick and Dr. Jones after our break in a moment, and please stay with us and be enlightened.
The